Books and Booze, a bookish and wine-induced podcast from two book lovers who have never met. That is the power of the internet.
Bonjour. Bonjour.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
We're very well. How are you, Tessa?
Yeah, I'm well. I'm great. I'm having a great time this Monday night.
Well, we just wanted to welcome you to Books and Booze. We're really excited to have you here as we've just read your book, April in Paris, 1921. So please, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Thank you. Yes. So April in Paris, 1921 is, I guess, a spy thriller. It's a mystery story set in April in Paris in 1921. The heroine is Kiki Button, who's an Australian who fled to World War I, specifically to become a nurse, who had more adventures than she could possibly cope with. And after having a good long rest after the war, she finds herself or propels herself back to Paris. She affords her stay there by working as a gossip columnist, meaning that she can meet all the rich and famous who come into Paris. She lives in Montparnasse, which is where all the famous artists of the time lived. And as she's having her fun, she's contacted by someone she knows from the war with a special mission to complete. And it goes from there.
So it was a really fun book, and it's got quite a different style. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I wanted it to be fun. This book came from a much bigger idea that was set in World War I and was a romance, but also a tragedy, but also funny, but also like ironic and making all these philosophical points. And I thought, that book's too big. No book can contain all of those ideas. It's too much. And I had finished my doctorate and I was pregnant and then I was breastfeeding and I needed a completely different type of book. I needed a book that was fun, but not so fluffy that it made me feel like I just wasted my time. So I needed something that was fun but also meaty, that had a character that I really enjoyed, that didn't have a terrible ending, that didn't involve itself completely in a lot of the darkness that you get in a lot of other crime books. And yeah, Kiki Button came from there.
Because we're Books and Booze, we always pair the books we read with a glass of wine. So what did you decide to pair your book with tonight?
Well, if it could be any night of the week, then this book has to go with French champagne.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But because it's a Monday night, what I actually chose was whiskey, which is one of the things that Kiki likes to drink when she's being quiet and contemplative, when she's having an intimate moment with a good friend and they're talking about serious things. So that's what I've gone with some delicious single malt whiskey. I don't know what it is. I took it from my husband's hip flask.
Oh,
I like that he has a hip flask.
It's very smooth and it's very nice.
Very nice.
I picked a pink Moscato because Kiki is Australian and I thought that it was a nice pink girly Moscato, a little bit sweet, a little bit fun like her.
Perfect.
And you, Jade?
Well, if I could have chosen anything, I would have gone for like a nice rosé, but I don't really like rosé because it gives me a headache. So for this one, I decided I needed to choose something a bit bubbly and fun. So I chose Sparkling Shiraz. It's a Seaview premium Australian wine, and it's got bursting flavours of ripe berries and spices. And there's a lot about strawberries and wine in the book, so I thought it was a great pick.
Yeah, delicious. I'll have to write those pink Moscato and Sparkling Shiraz into the next book.
Well, so also, I just wanted to say I've never been able to get into whiskey. I just don't. I can't handle the smell. Like, it's my partner's birthday tomorrow, and I'm hoping to buy him a little bottle of whiskey, and I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, right.
Are you any good at choosing whiskeys?
No, I'm not a connoisseur, but I would go. I would go in and ask, but I would maybe choose a single malt because they're delicious. Scottish whiskies are delicious, and so are Tasmanian and Japanese whiskies. And I hate bourbon. I hate American whiskey. It's just not my thing. Some people love it. It smells like teenage parties, and I just don't like it at all. So I avoid it. And Scottish single malt whiskey is what I would drink.
Yeah. I've never even heard of Japanese whiskey.
Mm.
That's awesome.
It's good.
One to look out for.
Yeah. If you get him Japanese whiskey, you'll look really sophisticated and in the know.
Well, that's what we want.
Yes, definitely.
So let's chat a bit about Kiki, because she's such a great character. Like, I really, really enjoyed her. And of course I love her name because I am Kiki too.
Hooray.
So where did she come from? Like, where did the idea of Kiki come from? Is there any of you in her?
Yes, there's quite a lot of me. My cousin, who was one of my first readers, has called her my doppelganger. And she has a blonde bob and I have a blonde bob. Although, admittedly, I got the bob because I wrote a blob into the book. So I went the other way around, life imitating art. But as I said, I was pregnant and breastfeeding, and there were a lot of things like I couldn't go out for more than an hour by myself. I couldn't drink, and I just got married. So sort of nights on the town where you end up in some lovely stranger's bed, those days were long gone. And so I was writing in a lot of the things that, even though I'd chosen this life and I love it, I still couldn't do them. And so I put them all in. And I also put in all the things that I love about literature, but that I hadn't been writing. So like a first person voice that's very chatty and intimate, lots of plot, lots of dialogue, and I love dialogue.
Yeah.
So
your
there's a lot
dialogue's
of
great in the book.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's really believable.
Yeah.
I do a lot of reading aloud. So if I read it, when I read my work aloud, especially the dialogue pieces, it's easy to tell when you've, like, if you have to take a breath in the middle of the sentence, you're like, okay, that's it, that line is too long. Or you find yourself tripping up on your own words, you're like, no. So
that's such a good technique.
Yeah, that is a very good technique.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about, you set the novel in the 1920s.
Yes.
That must have required quite a lot of research. And I just wanted to find out from you, how long did it take to write the book from start to finish with all the research and everything involved?
It's hard to say if I include all the research. The actual writing only took just over a year. So that was quite quick. But 1920s Bohemia, that interwar period, interwar Paris is one of my favorite places. My doctorate was in contemporary war fiction. So I read a lot about World War I, World War II, and the other 20th century wars. And when I couldn't read about dying soldiers and trapped civilians and all the other horrors anymore, I would read about the 1920s. I would read about the interwar period and about Paris. It has some little part to do with war, and a lot of the characters in the 20s talk about the war. If you read Franny Fisher, for example, she's always mentioning, every other book she's mentioning her war service, and she relates to people on that level. So I can pick up little bits here and there, and I pretended it was research, but really it was just fun. So if I include all the research, it was a very lackadaisical decade of reading, shall we say, and then maybe a year of concentrated reading as I wrote the book to kind of totally get all the details in my mind. Yeah, and other things I just read for myself. So, for example, I was reading, there's Picasso in the book, but I was reading about Picasso because of his work ethic. He has this famous work ethic where he works every day, all day. And for example, all through World War II, when there was no paper rationing, they've displayed his paintings that he's done on newspaper and scrap cardboard and chipboard and anything he's found around the house, stuff that he's done in charcoal that he's picked up from his fireplace, anything. And so I wanted to read, how does one work like that? How does one be disciplined enough like that, and try and relate that to my own writing? Not that I did, because Picasso had a series of wives who helped him run the house and do all of those things, and I don't have one of those.
It would be handy, though. I often think that.
Yeah.
It would be handy to have a wife.
It would be handy. I think it just would be handy to have a cleaner come in regularly, often. Regularly. Kind of like
that's what we're used to in
equal
South
relationship.
Africa.
Oh, really? There you go.
Yeah, it's weird here in Australia because I'm from South Africa. So I used to have like sorry for lack of a better word, like a maid every day, and it's so different to have to do it all yourself here. But getting used to it. But yeah, so a few wives would come in quite handy.
Yeah, it meant that when I was doing the research, I picked up a lot about Picasso on the way, about who he was. So I didn't need to do extra research about Picasso. I just needed a few details. Where did he live? What date was his son born? What date did he get married? All right, and then I could go and write the book because of the background research I'd already done.
Can I ask you one quick question? I'm just going off the script here, but do you know his full name?
Oh, no, I don't. He's got like 8 or 9 names, doesn't he?
Yeah, if you Google it, I was Googling it today. His full name is like, I can't even remember what it was, but it's absolutely bonkers. Let me see if I can figure it out quick. Oh, wait, there we go.
Yeah.
Pablo Diego Jose Francisco de Paulo Juan Nepomuceno Maria de los Remedios Cipriano de la Santísima Trinidad Cruz y Picasso.
Well, no one can ever say that my name is a mouthful again.
Yeah.
Because I have 2 middle names, and people are always like, "What? Why do you have 2?" I'm like, I'm Italian.
I have 2 middle names as well.
Yeah.
It's not that unusual. 7 or 8 middle names is pretty full on. But Spanish speakers have those 2 surnames always, the from the mother and the father. So they always have more names.
I kind of like that they have both last names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also liked in the book that you mentioned a lot about his first wife, Olga. I just felt like the whole book was extremely well researched.
Thank you so much.
In many ways. So that was a really, really nice surprise, because I thought I was going into more of a fiction novel. And while it was fiction, there was also, I learned so much through reading the book.
Thank you. It's not perfectly tied to what actually happened. I took a lot of artistic license, but there's a lot that's true enough.
Based on fact.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned before that you wrote this when you were pregnant and when you were breastfeeding, and I'd like to know a bit more about that because how old is your daughter now?
She's 2.
She's 2. Okay, so I've got a 3.5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So, like, how do you find time for everything?
Well, I would say it's easier with 1 than with 2. I write best in the morning around dawn, 6 o'clock.
Okay.
My daughter is not an early riser, so I get up and I get half an hour up to 2 hours before she wakes up.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I do my best writing. When I wrote this, when I finished it, it was between when she was sort of 3 to 6 months old. She had this amazing period where she slept 12 hours a night from 8 to 8 every night.
The teasing period.
And I could get up at 6 and then work until 8. And then she started teething and I didn't sleep more than 2 hours in a stretch for several months, but that was okay. The book was done. I also am very lucky that I can afford to have 2 days a week that I can devote to writing and writing work. So if I don't get any of those mornings because life is life, then I also have another couple of days to do extra work, and that also helps me consolidate all the other work around writing, the administration and the reading and the editing and the research. So I'm very lucky. So I don't know how I would manage it with 2. It would depend what they were like. And I might have to do something that I've never done before, like teach myself to write at night, which I've never been able to do. But being flexible, I found, is the key, and also having very loose deadlines.
Going back to the more arty side of things, I just wanted to know more about. You mentioned that so it's something that's it's a big passion of yours. But so I used to work at one of the best art galleries in South Africa, and I just absolutely love immersing myself into the world of Parisian art in this book. And
Thank
like
you.
I said, I learned so much. But have you always been passionate about art in that way, or where does that all come from? This inspiration for
it's more to do with the period. I don't really know very much about contemporary art at all. Even though
it
my
seems
cousin,
like it.
thank you. Even though my cousin is an artist, but this period I'm fascinated with as a historical period, political period, and there's so much cultural change going on as well. And so the literature of that time, like Virginia Woolf and T.S. Eliot, Hemingway, Gertrude Stein, and then the art like Picasso and all the other modernists and the futurists and the surrealists. And so I've spent a long time, I guess, looking at those people and the way that they change the way we think about art, the way we think about representation, the way we think about language and literary structure and what it can do, and how that related politically to what was going on in the world with the wars and the Russian Revolution and the rise of communism and the rise of fascism through Germany and the changes in like women getting the vote and the changes in women's place in society and how all of these different things spoke to each other. This is what I'm interested in this book, I guess, in this period. So what Picasso was doing with Cubism is not unrelated to the Russian Revolution, shall we say.
Yeah.
They're not separated. They're having the same conversation about making the world anew and changing the structures, whether that's a structure of representation on a canvas or a structure of political representation within the state. They're having a similar sorts of conversations, and this is sort of what I wanted to get at with the way that Kiki can move between like aristocrats and soldiers and artists and spies.
Yeah.
And feel just as home, because it's like a series of ideas that are going around in the society. Does that answer your question? It's not really the art, it's more the ideas, I guess, is the answer to your question.
You're very knowledgeable about nursing and fashion and stuff like that. So were they fields that you ever wanted to get into or that you were interested in?
Nursing? No, not at all. But I've read a lot about World War I, and because the women's place in society interests me so much, and so many women were on the front line as nurses, then what the nurses do and how they worked and how they connected with the soldiers and then the social structures. That's where my research lay. Fashion, I love vintage fashion. I'm into it in a big way, and I do like swing dancing and Charleston and I go rock and roll dancing, and I'm really I love to dress like that. Yeah, it's super fun. I love it, but I like it just aesthetically. I like it politically as a modern woman, because it's a different way of relating to contemporary fashion by using the fashions of the past. And then I also love it because the fashion of the 1920s, for example, is again part of this conversation about making it new. So they chopped off their hair and they got rid of their corsets and they shortened their skirts and they wore makeup, which before was only for actresses and prostitutes. They smoked in public. They did all these things that the flappers did, all these things that were seen as either tomboyish, not feminine, or as seen as only for very particular types of women that signaled, being sexually available and this kind of thing, which they were, but it wasn't, for money. It was just for fun, because they were a new type of woman, and the dresses kind of seem to signal that. So I'm definitely interested in the way that fashion and politics and culture talk to each other. I got into that in a big way, and Pinterest is, of course, a great resource, and Instagram and stuff like that. But I also have some beautiful books as well. Like I've got this big thick tome that's like 7 centimeters thick called 1920s fashion that goes through
Oh,
year by year and looking at how the dresses change shape, and then they've got hats and coats and shoes, and I got that one years ago just because I thought it was so beautiful, and I've spent ages looking at that. 1921, the dresses are not that typical 1920s dress that we think of, with the very short skirt and the very up and down. That sort of came in a bit later. Although I've made Kiki dress like that, I figure she's what's the word? She's an early adopter. She's an early adopter of contemporary
she's a bit
fashion.
saucy.
Yeah, she's a little bit saucier than everybody else. And if everybody's, if the elegant thing is to wear like a calf length dress, then that elegance not really what she cares about. So,
Yeah.
but 1921 was still, it was just because it's just on the cusp of the decade. So the dresses, they weren't to the ankle like they were in the teens, but they weren't as high as the knee either. They were sort of in between, and they still had a waist, and they were very loose. So the sort of the loose androgynous shapelessness, they weren't androgynous, but they were becoming looser and looser and looser. So yeah, so that's really interesting. And some people had chopped off their hair, but it wasn't the major fashion point where, by 1928 there was not a single woman that had hair past her shoulders. Everybody had short hair. So yeah, but Kiki's an early adopter. She does it first, then others follow.
Yeah. The one thing I really liked, I mean, like I've said like repeatedly, it's super well researched, but I
Thank
mean,
you.
even you went on to go as far as to say more of like what was used as undergarments back in the
Yeah.
day. And that, like, I don't know that much about 1920s fashion, and I just found
Yeah,
that
right.
being like incredibly fascinating to like learn about all the little bits they've got underneath and what they'd keep on, sketches with Picasso.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, actually, I thank you. I've been reading about for that 10 years because the taking off of the corset was an enormous thing. So that
and she did wear a corset.
no, she didn't wear a corset. Well, she chose not even to wear underpants, which was actually a very bohemian thing to do. Just go the whole lot. I just can't be bothered. I just can't be bothered, and there are no toilets anyway. This is just much more practical as well as more fun. But the corset was such a way of both defining and confining the female body. So to take it off, to just get rid of it completely, felt like radical. It felt like you were almost naked because it was just you, your bra, and your dress, which we're used to, but they were not used to that. They were used to like several layers of clothing between themselves and the air, regardless of the temperature. I mean, you'd expect several layers if it's the middle of winter, but in the middle of summer, they would still have several layers. The layers were simply made of different material. So yeah, to take it all off and to actually show the shape of the body was radical, and that's what I wanted to capture. And I find that particularly fascinating, and the way that underwear is used to control and define the female body, and the way that feminism can speak to that and speak through that, like the bra burning of the 1960s, and how in the 1970s my mum said we never wore a bra, never. It just, and the way that spoke to a particular type of feminism. Yeah, I'm really interested in that.
I wonder if we're kind of even going backwards now because, everyone wears Spanx.
Oh, yes. I wouldn't say we're going, I would say we're always going forwards, but just the way perhaps might not seem, the way it's not very linear. Yeah. It's not a straight line.
Maybe in a way we're taking control of it, so we're choosing when we want to wear Spanx.
I think if you have very tight-fitting clothing, then I think then maybe the Spanx are necessary. But I think, it's complicated. I mean, I wear, as I said, I wear a lot of vintage clothes, so people wear things like Spanx in order to achieve the kind of silhouette that would have had a corset underneath, or some other kind of foundation garment from the 40s and 50s. They want that wasp waist, like the waspy tiny waist to go in the 50s dresses, but because they go to the gym, they don't have it. They have a muscled waist. They're not tiny and slender. They haven't just lived through World War II and a depression, They don't have that kind of, they can't have that kind of slenderness. They go to the gym and they eat well. So yeah, I think it's to achieve a certain look rather than to control and define the body. My friend does a lot of research on Jane Austen. She's a Jane Austen scholar, and she said that corsets in the Regency period were actually seen as a health garment because they held up the body in a time when women didn't have muscle and weren't expected to have muscle in their core and in their back, and the corset would hold you up and keep you straight and stop you slumping, and so it was seen as almost a healthful thing, as well as to fit into your dresses. So I think the conversations around women's garments are always embedded in the society and always much more complex than they seem from the outside.
It's really fascinating, actually. I never thought of it that way, but it does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I have other people that, like, I read about other people from the vintage scene who have also gone back to corsets for similar reasons. They have back problems, and the corset holds them in place. So they're like, well, if I'm going to wear a brace, if I have to wear a brace, why don't I wear a corset and make it out of black satin? You know? So it is a taking. It looks like it's one thing, but it's a taking control of a body that's causing pain.
Yep.
And there's lots of
Because backs cause a lot of grief and a lot of pain for a lot of people. So what is next for Kiki? Because if you go onto Goodreads, it says a Kiki button mystery #1. So does that mean there's more to come?
Well, yes, I'm writing Kiki button #2. So it's September 1921. A lot's happened over the summer. Things have changed and moved, and she finds herself deep in with the Russians that have fled the revolution. In particular, a certain taxi-driving Russian prince and his famous brother-in-law, as well as all the usual characters of Kiki's friends Bertie and Maisie and Harry, and of course Tom. So yes.
Okay.
And Fox.
That's exciting.
We can't forget Fox.
I love Russian history, so I'm excited for this one.
Oh, good. My husband's Russian, so the Russians had to come back. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, that's lovely that you've incorporated that into your novel as well. Nastarovia.
Da. Очень хорошо.
Wow, you've got loads of languages under your belt.
Well, my husband's Russian, so my mother-in-law and grandmother-in-law speak Russian to my daughter. So there's a lot of Russian going around. In fact, I'll be the only one who's not fluent.
Can I ask, what is your daughter's name?
Penelope, or Penny. We call her Penny.
I really like that.
Thank you. It was I like it. It's the name I would have called myself age 5 if I'd had the choice. So instead I gave it to her.
Oh. I think that leads us on to our busy banter. So every episode we end off with what we've been enjoying, whether it be Netflix, movies, songs, food, whatever we want, and our authors too. So what have you been enjoying lately?
Well, it's very Kiki themed. I've been enjoying the Russians. So for some reason, it just recently, even though I've been with my husband for 6 years, it only just recently clicked a desperate desire to read classic Russian literature and to get into a Russian history around this period. So I watched the Netflix show, The Road to Calvary, and I watched that twice. And then I read Dr. Zhivago. I'm now reading The White Guard, which is by Mikhail Bulgakov. I'm eating my grandmother-in-law's mushroom soup, like gribnoy soup, and that's what I've been into. That's what I've been into. And dark chocolate.
Fully. Oh,
yeah,
yum.
Completely. Yeah, and dark chocolate, and like researching contemporary Russian writers, so Mikhail Shishkin and Ludmila, I think it's Ulitskaya, The Big Green Tent. They're on my list, and I went to Kinokuniya today and I bought And Quiet Flows the Don. Where is it? I've got it in my bag. And Quiet Flows the Don by Sholokhov. I forget. Hold on a second. I'll get it out of the bag. It's right next to me. Yeah, Mikhail Sholokhov, And Quiet Flows the Don, which is all, again, set in that revolutionary period. I also read the book of The Road to Calvary, but it's just... It's Soviet propaganda wrapped up as a romance. And
Okay.
when the lovers are finally reunited, back they're too busy being good Bolsheviks to have sex. I was a bit disappointed, to be honest.
Oh.
My mother-in-law is like, don't read that. Read Dr. Zhivago. And I'm like, yeah, I'll read both. And she's like, no, just don't bother. Just read Dr. Zhivago. I'm
So
like,
you should have listened.
You're right. Yeah. I'm like, you're right. She's like, I know.
I know.
I had
I
to
told
read it
you.
for school. Yeah. The guy who wrote The Road to Calvary was awarded the Stalin Prize, whereas Boris Pasternak, who wrote Dr. Zhivago, was awarded the Nobel Prize. So that's the
Okay.
difference.
Yeah,
That's the difference.
Yeah.
little bit of a difference. I must say, as a Sydney sider, I think I'm a little bit ashamed that I've never been to that bookstore in the city.
Oh, haven't you? It's my favorite,
No.
and I'm a member. It's one of my
Yes.
favorites. I also love Abby's.
Mm-hmm.
And of course Glebe Books, and the one just in my most local one, which would be Better Red Than Dead in Newtown. But I love to make a day of it in the city when I go into the city. So today I was working in the New South Wales State Library, and then
Beautiful.
for lunch I go and get a pretzel and go buy a book and maybe like a very expensive chocolate from Cocoa Black, and that's yeah.
So that's your perfect day?
It's like a perfect work day.
It's a perfect work day. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go to some of these bookshops in the city. It's just I'm Western Sydney, so it's a bit far. So I watched a movie called Get Out. Have you heard of that one? It was nominated for an Oscar last year. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's about a boy and his girlfriend, and they've reached the meet the parent milestone of their relationship, and she invites him away for a weekend. Have you seen it?
No, but I've heard that it's brilliant.
It was phenomenal. I didn't know a lot going into it, but I knew it was something that I really wanted to watch, and I didn't want to be spoiled for, which is what I recommend. So basically, she invites him to her parents' house for the weekend, and they get there, and it's all a bit awkward, and he thinks it's awkward because they're an interracial couple, but it's much darker than that. Like, it's very, very dark, very disturbing, very creepy, and it was phenomenal. Like, the writing is incredible, so I can see why it got and then I have read two books, which was The Lies We Told by Camilla Way and All the Missing Girls by Megan Miranda. And All the Missing Girls is told back to front, and I didn't like it. It was an interesting, like, did you ever see the Memento? That movie Memento, which was back to front. And then the other one I listened to an audiobook was The Lies We Told by Camilla Way, which is about a mum, and she's got these concerns about her daughter because her daughter does strange things like setting fire to things and like pinching their baby boy and all this sort of stuff, and doesn't seem to have any remorse. And it kind of tells the story of her growing up. And it's another one that's told it goes back and forward between present day and the past. But that one was fantastic. I enjoyed that one.
Great.
Okay.
What about you, Jade?
So I just finished the audio book. I think it's an Audible original production of Evil Has a Name, the untold story of the Golden State Killer investigation by Paul Holes, Jim Clementi, and Peter McDonald.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys familiar with the Golden State Killer case?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so he's this dude that was he raped over 50 women in, what was it, like the 1950s in California, throughout like Sacramento and stuff. It's a true case, and back then DNA wasn't a thing, so he didn't get caught for a very long time. And there was this book called I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara, which was released just before he got caught, and it's a fantastic book and tells you a lot about the case. And then this book, Evil Has a Name by Paul Holes, is fabulous because it's how they caught him. Just after the book was released, they caught the guy, and it's fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it, and I think that people should read I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara first, and then head on to Evil Has a Name, because it's the perfect complement to the book, because because it kind of finishes the story, and it's very much about how science helped solve the case as time progressed, and I'm a sucker for true crime, so I loved it. The only other thing that I've been enjoying is The Sinner, season 2.
Oh, I haven't started it yet, but I've heard really good things.
The little boy is super creepy. Yeah. Have you seen The Sinner, Tessa?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
I don't actually know what it's about. I haven't heard of it.
Oh, really?
No.
Well, do you like kind of like horror, like thriller stuff?
I hate horror. I
Okay.
can't stand it. So if the little boy is really creepy, I probably almost certainly will not watch it. It just gives me nightmares. And the nightmare, even Scream gave me nightmares. I have no enjoyment of being scared. I find it deeply uncomfortable. And then the only way I can cope is to completely cut myself off from the fear. And then it's sort of like, what's the point? You're just watching these things happen, but you're not afraid because I'm refusing to allow myself to be afraid because I can't cope with it. It's just the whole thing's a total fail. So I like it. I like a good mystery, and I like a good detective story. But when it tips into horror or creepiness, I'm done. I turn off.
Yeah, it's kind of like a really believable stuff. So the first season of The Sinner is with Jessica Biel, and she gets triggered by a song. She's on the beach with her son and literally hears the song and just goes and stabs this guy on the beach to death. And it's about why and what triggered her and all that kind of stuff. And now this season, I've only just started, but it's a little boy that basically poisons his mum and dad with their teeth. And they die, and he has to get sent in for questioning, and it's the same detective, which is really cool. But you could watch either one, so it's not like creepy as in like evil kind of exorcist shit. It's just creepy.
Okay, well, thank you then for joining us, Tessa. We've loved having you on to talk about your beautiful book.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Did you want to just quickly let people know where they can find you on social media?
Yes, I do. So I'm on Twitter at Tessa Wynn. That's WYNN. I'm on Instagram as Tessa Wynn, and Kiki Button is also on Instagram at Miss Kiki Button. So there's a special account dedicated to all things 1920s Paris and the book. And that's
a very fun Instagram.
Thank you. I
had
have
really
a lot of fun running it. There'll be a Facebook author page soon, and I also have a website and blog, which is tessalunney.com.
Perfect.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Great.
It was lovely to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye, Tessa. Have a good evening.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, Chiara.
Bye.
And bye, Jade.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Books and Booze. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter under BooksBoozePod, or email us at hello@booksboozepod.com. We're also on Patreon if you'd like to support our podcast by donating as little as $2 a month. If you're looking for a free way to support us, then you can leave us a review on Apple iTunes or Stitcher. It really helps other people find us. As always, it's been a pleasure. I'm Jade, and you can follow my Instagram at boho_bookworm, and Chiara is my co-host, and you can find her under bookish.kiki. Until next time, happy reading and drink responsibly.